put a handful of rounds in. And anytime that, what I'll do for example, if I'm putting in a whole sheet, so this probably should be buried underneath. We don't have any fly problems at all. So
the little tiny.
So these guys, there's actually a whole bunch of things that are in
the
compost. So they get mites as well as worms, and there's sometimes other things that live in here, and that's okay. There's a whole host of things that live here. What I'll do is I'll make sure that this top layer is moist, because if there are any worms that are on here, they need a moist environment there, or else they'll dry out and die.
So some babies.
Yeah, some baby ones. And then these things, I think,
Those
are
eggs?
little egg sacs. Yeah.
Okay.
Which is really interesting.
That they're all on the lid.
Yeah, they like to, when they're doing really, really well, they'll put them where they're doing well. And if you fed them a lot recently, some people actually are very nice to their worms. If you want to process a ton of food and you have one of these, some people take it through a processor, like a food processor, blend it up to small pieces, and the worms actually can process it so much faster than anything else. So
Smart.
very impressive. That's a little too much work for some people. Just throw it in. Doesn't really matter. But if you have like a giant, like say a squash, winter squash that went bad in your pantry, just chop it up into rough chops and put it in.
Nice.
They love squash. They love melons. They love any of those things.
What is-
But these guys are great.
What is the material of the green plastic? Is it just?
It's a plastic thing, and I think it's recycled plastic. I don't know. There's actually a company that makes. Sorry guys. Yeah. But this stuff is all anything that's gone through the worms is will come out that color. If it had things like more eggshells in it, it would be a little grittier. Like you probably still see some eggshells.
So they're okay with eggshells? They're not too sharp for them?
No, I haven't found it to be a problem, but some people will say too sharp, don't worry about it, or don't put them in. But I haven't had too much of a problem. If you want to, I think they have like a specific set of instructions, like to make your worms thrive to the utmost.
To the end.
Do it really well. Just a couple things that not to put in are not sunflower seeds. Citrus, for some reason, they don't like. Sunflower seeds are actually similar to black walnuts. They have like a chemical inhibitor. So if you look at a bird feeders, oftentimes there's no growth, and the main reason is I think sunflower seed husks specifically. And then, they usually will recommend things to put in. I mean, they have stuff like dryer lint. It's really crazy, the things that you can put in that work.
Can you compost any kind of dryer lint?
Yeah, like on the cotton clothes, or
I think especially if you're using biodegradable washing materials, then I would say sure. But if you're not doing if you're using if you bleached something recently, I probably wouldn't do anything like that. But if you're using anything that can go into the water supply, then they'll be fine too. But they are a little more sensitive. So I usually just keep a newspaper, and sometimes what I'll do is I'll just shred it in. Actually, not like that, but that works too. Is I'll have a big bin, and sometimes if you have watching a movie or something, I just have my whole big bin, and I'll just make strips, any size or shape or whatever, and have a big bin. And so anytime that I need to feed the worms, I will just put them straight in.
right in.
So yeah, but anytime you put in this guy keeps us.
How do you know you need to feed them?
So you can leave these guys for up to. It's ridiculous. You can actually leave them up to a month, 2 months, 3 months. This guy, I think, survived for a very, very, very long time.
would they go through? How long would it take them to go through, say, a normal day's worth of food composting stuff? Yeah.
So if you build it up slowly, they actually will go. The population will explode to the point where they can handle a huge amount of waste going through. If you feed them less, the population will scale down to what it can handle. If a worm dies in there, it essentially just propagates. Or it feeds the soil. Again, it's really very, very organic in many different senses of the word. But it's fantastic. And this is actually I have one of these in my kitchen. So I just keep it out of direct sunlight and just keep it there, and nobody knows about it except really. Actually, our landlords know about it, but because we're not used to it in our apartment, so we call our worm Sydney because it's a pretty generic name. So We got that. But yeah, those are our only pets.
I've been thinking about trying to figure out how to keep a bin of worms underneath my rabbit cage.
Oh.
So the poop can just go right down in there.
Yeah.
And then I think you just, add wet shavings or more newspaper and
That's
do
a
that.
great
And then it
idea.
just goes straight down.
So these worms are actually particularly geared towards eating things very quickly. There's a variety called red wriggler. They're at fishing stores.
I think Groundworks Somerville sells them, right? Yeah.
And they can't survive a winter. So they will they'll die back. But so if you use them for compost, they definitely stick them out there.
Yeah. I was just trying to figure out when would be a good time for me to start that experiment because it's starting to warm up, right? I could probably do
I'd
it
say
now.
actually end of April maybe.
Yeah,
Would be perfect.
Yeah. So I'm just trying to figure out how to do it so that I don't think that the rabbit pee is good for it. I think the manure is great, but I just don't know how to keep it separated.
No, keep it separate. That's a really interesting.
Yeah, I think I just need to go on the internet. Because there are people who've sort of figured out some kind of
like a rolling method or
just
something like that.
some sort of thing.
Something that
sort of
absorbs the urine.
Yeah, exactly. Just have because he pees in certain spots,
Right.
so I can just I don't know.
Or if you had like a hardware cloth slant, so that the poop rolled down.
Yeah, and then the
pee
went somewhere else. I don't know. It's
Yeah,
kinda,
straight down maybe instead of sideways down.
Yeah, so I just need to figure that part of it out. But yeah, I've read really neat things about it where the rabbit,
such a good idea.
Rabbit owners, they do that, and it's like sort of like this little enclosed system where you get all kinds of stuff.
That's such a good idea.
Yeah,
yeah,
they say that the castings that come out of that are awesome.
So this is actually, it's so funny, like people talk about harvesting different things. Like this is, I would technically call, it's like a compost crop. So this is a very low light thing. Any, all the waste, you can go in there, it goes in there. It's really harvesting different waste streams to make something. And I think it's amazing. It's really, really easy to do, and you can use the compost directly on top of potted plants. I wouldn't pot something directly in this because this is such a good quality.
You can dilute it with other stuff.
I would dilute it, so using just maybe mixing it in with other soil. But every year what I'll do is I'll clean mine out, most of it. I'll do the maybe bottom 2 drawers. And I'll just put them all on my houseplants. If worms get in the houseplants, no big deal because they'll just aerate the soil, and if they die, it's okay, but they do help the plant roots as well. So, and that's all the microbes as well.
How do you get it all started?
So what I'd recommend is the most ideal way is if you know somebody who has a composting thing, literally when their worms are doing really well, they can give you a clump of worms with some compost. It's great. That's a great way to do it. And then I would add in some food and some scraps. And again, making sure the food scraps, if it's not coffee you can kind of just throw in anytime. But making sure they're covered, and that'll really cut down any kind of fruit flies.
So where do you start the worms in the?
At the bottom. So I would probably start, and I'll just show you what this looks like. There they are. There's some still down there. That probably means there are not very many being fed. And it's a little wet.
I'm videoing this.
So we should definitely drain that at some point too.
So does that mean this is full of...
It is.
So when they're done, they'll migrate up?
They should migrate up, and then if they're not if there's not a lot of food here, they'll go to, or if it's really cold, they'll sink to the very center. So these probably haven't been fed as much as they should, for example.
I got some compost I can bring over.
Yeah, no, seriously, and this is a great way to go. And actually, let me just grab.
So
I'm gonna just try it.
system, I didn't get the beginning of this.
So it's there's holes between each layer. Every time you fill up a layer, it gets full up to the top, you just take this off, put a new layer on, and put food in it. The worms go straight up.
Do you take the bottom layer out and use it like it's ready to go or something, or do you have to keep on buying stacks?
Well, you can. So I usually what I'll do, because the bottom layer is now pretty small, I'll sometimes, if I'm not ready to use that, I'll just switch that one to the top and just keep switching the bottom layer to the top. Because it's had the most time to be compressed and condensed into a very small amount of compost.
So there's more room.
There's more room.
Again. How much is one of those
Even if you
things?
don't use. I don't know, actually, off the top of my head. I know that they used to be kind of expensive because it was the only thing like it. but that was about maybe 5-10 years ago. So now I don't know. I assume that you could, because they're not that hard. You can also make these. So if you have, like, for example, Home Depot buckets, you can do the same thing.
You just nestle them in each other?
You nestle them in each other. Just make sure
just
that
like
you
the little
drain it
holes.
every now and then. Because that
Right, you
is
can.
the only thing is they sometimes get a little
How big are
crazy.
the
So let me just see if there's anything.
Ah.
A little bit, not a lot, but it'll be really dark like this. If you haven't done it in a while, this might smell, but as soon as you water your plants, it dissipates because sometimes it'll get anaerobic if it's too much.
Have you ever used an anaerobic, you know, the
Kabashi?
kibosh? I have one
Yeah.
of those.
Yeah, no, I have not, but I know people who are really happy with them.
Yeah.
So
It's
I'm
small.
really
It's like
recommend
really
them.
for like an
Yeah.
apartment. But I wouldn't
that's
mind
great.
having one of these too.
Yeah, this one is great. And again, they tell you things that they recommend not to feed them. So they don't recommend certain, like for example, large amounts of citrus. Because so you can do small amounts, but worms tend not to like it. It's not that it won't break down. It has something specifically in it that worms really don't like, and in large amounts can kill off some worms. So. But you know,
So
it's
get a Cuisinart, stick everything in it, and then
yeah.
throw it in there.
They love. I mean, like you should see watermelon rinds go like that. It's crazy. They eat them off to the point where there's like a paper thin. That's awesome. Like layer, and those ones, because they're made of a harder material. Like for example, broccoli has like they'll eat the inside out, and it'll be like a paper thin shell of where the stem was. And it's really interesting that outer layer is made of lignin, and that so the mites literally mechanically bite those apart. They'll break them apart, but they can't completely break them down to their raw elements. Only fungi can do that. So mites that are in here, those little guys, and I don't know if you guys saw them, but there's some small ones.
They're teeny tiny.
They're really, really small. You can, actually, there's
They're like these
right
little
there. There's one right there.
silver specks.
Little tiny guys. So and then sometimes they're red. There's some red round
So
ones.
do they just appear?
There's a bunch.
Yeah, I mean, do you have to buy the
And so those guys are.
worms and stuff, or does it come with?
You can find somebody with worms that can propagate them. You can also just get them at a fishing store, and then just add them with food. If you can,
At Green City
if you add
Growers, they're like
compost, that
$10
helps.
for like a pound bag, I think, or maybe a half a pound.
Wait, this is Green City Growers.
Oh, not Groundworks.
It's Groundwork
Groundwork
Somerville.
Somerville.
Groundwork Somerville is actually a really good source.
Also, like science catalogs for kids, because when I taught kindergarten, we had something like
Oh,
that.
really?
But we had a slide that you could pull it back so you could see
Oh,
underground
so you
and
can
watch
see
them
it.
dig.
That's such a good
It
idea.
was really cool to see
Yeah.
like, the little tunnels and look like a
And
couple hours later.
having these worms in your regular compost can also benefit it as well. So sometimes people will put them in their regular outdoor compost to help it go faster, and then take a giant ball of them and stick them indoors for winter, or maybe just have them indoors. So you can always, if you bulk up your population, then you can always bring these and put them outside. So
Cool.
but yeah, they're great. They're really, really good, and I feel like worms are amazing. They're another one of those creatures that are just like,
Everybody
incredible.
should have
Yeah.
them in every house.
So-
Yeah, I should get one for my daughter, because she'll go out in the garden and get like a little pot and go look for worms and stick it in the pot with some dirt, and
Aw.
then bring it back in the house. And
Yeah.
those will be her little pets. So I have like these little pots of just dirt, like in the
Hanging
kitchen.
around.
Yeah, in the kitchen. And
That's really funny.
she's 4.
So a lot of those guys, a lot of them are probably night crawlers, which are a different variety.
Yeah, they're like these big ones. They're
but-
like
yeah, and these guys supposedly work best at room temperature. I don't know what night crawlers are much hardier.
Yeah.
But they're not as they won't break things down as quickly. Yeah. So, but these guys are. I mean, they're all pretty fantastic. So, and if other things get in the compost, like it's not. Like especially if you're taking some worms from your garden, chances are you'll probably have other little bugs, and they all my experience with these have been they all stay in there because that's their environment. They want to be there, and unless your compost has no airflow, or like really dry or incredibly wet, they're not gonna in any way want to leave. The only reason they want to leave or try to leave is if something's wrong. So if you see like a worm on the floor, you want to just make sure that this is like properly drained, you know?
Right.
What
Or anything
about
like
fruit
that.
flies?
So,
You get fruit flies?
sometimes I do, but again, putting the we've never had fruit flies in this one, and we had fruit flies in our sink. so they didn't come
Fruit
over
flies are
here.
really bad this summer.
They can be bad.
Everywhere.
You
But yeah.
want to get started, and then whenever he gets here,